Every great athlete or group has a nickname. Simply hearing the names brings to mind images and moments of greatness. Magic, the Great One, Dr. J, the Kid, the Great Bambino. While some of those names are over a century old, we still register them as household names today. But there is one nickname that has been lost to the general sports public. This is what you don't know about the Great Triumvirate of Golf. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Matt, and this is Blake.
Hello, friends.
Because it's golf.
Every time we do golf.
And today we're going to tell you about the members of a group that has perhaps the most epic name in sports history, the Great Triumvirate. Blake, before we get started, what is your favorite sports nickname?
When you say favorite sports nickname, I immediately go to individuals. Because like you said, every great player had some sort of nickname that they went by. Or yeah, I'd be willing to bet that all of the great players had some sort of nickname. The ones that resonate to all of us, for sure, all of us, are the ones where the player actually went by the nickname and you don't probably know their real name. Like Tiger Woods, for example. His first name is not Tiger, it's Eldrick. Chipper Jones. Chipper is not his first name.
All Mets fans know his first name, though, because they'll chant it at him. But
it's a little awkward sometimes. Satchel Paige, for example, his first name is Leroy. So you think about some of those. Some of the great ones, though, are like maybe the longest individual nickname is the Mound Round of Rebound. That's a good one for Charles Barkley. But then you have the all-time great ones like the Black Mamba for Kobe. Shoeless Joe Jackson. If I just told you Joe Jackson, the baseball player, would that ring a bell to most people? Probably not. So just the individuals that actually went by their nicknames, the ones that I always think of off the top of my head.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think those or the ones that are really descriptive. So like I always think of NASCAR driver Tony Stewart, whose nickname was Smoke because he did awesome burnouts, but also because he would get very upset and angry. So like smoke
he would
steaming
throw
out of
fits.
his ears. Yeah.
Hissy fits.
So that one was descriptive and on point. Or like Skywalker for David Thompson, even though he didn't go by it, it fit what he was doing. Mm-hmm. This one, though, has replaced anything else I would have for best nickname to me. Great Triumvirate. Like we're stealing from the Roman Republican Empire to do this, which is just impressive to me. The nickname belongs to three British golfers from the turn of the 20th century: Harry Vardon, John Henry Taylor, and James Braid, who for some reason I put as James Baird in almost every spot on this script. It's really hard to find information about James Baird because he's not important, but James Braid is. And so that's just, if you want to fact check this, just make sure you get the name right.
That's your behind the scenes look at Widcast Podcast.
Had to let everybody know the struggle. They get this nickname. We're going to do some more recap at the end, but just to give you an idea, they get this nickname because from 1894 to 1914, they won the British Open, which at the time was just called, in England is still just called the Open Championship. But they won it 16 times total in 21 chances in that span. And in the other 5, at least one of them finished solely or tied for second. So one of them was either first or second 21 consecutive years in a row, which seems like something that is worthy of a nickname.
You do that, you better have a nickname.
So we're gonna give you. I'm gonna give you a quick profile of each one, and then we're gonna kind of recap some of their biggest achievements together. We're gonna do this in the order that they first won the British Open. So this isn't in the order of birth or turning pro, just when they won. And so we start with John Henry Taylor, who was born in March 19th, 1871, in Northern Devon, England. Famously one of the locations of the movie War Horse. That's a great family World War I movie. Disney made it. It's got
Never
a horse.
seen it.
They go to war. It's a very descriptive.
Oh, really?
Name.
War
Yes.
Horse is about a
Yeah.
horse that goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would never guess, but it is. Anyway, one of the settings is Devon, England. He was born into a lower class family. Stop me if you've heard that before on one of these profiles. And he was actually orphaned as a child, and through just luck or fate or whatever, he ends up as a caddy as a young boy at Royal North Devon Golf Club. At the same golf club happened to be an amateur player by the name of Horace Hutchinson, who took Taylor under his wing. Taylor became his personal caddy, and Hutchinson would end up becoming the first person to ever defend the British Amateur Championship, winning back-to-back in 1886 and 1887. So as a 15 and 16-year-old, Taylor is helping Hutchinson do this, which is a great athletic achievement of the time. He's going to eventually turn pro in 1890 and quickly match in the professional ranks what his mentor did in the amateur ranks. In 1894 and 1895, he would win back-to-back British Open championships. He was just 22 and 23 years old when he accomplished that feat. So everything he does, relatively young age. None of his British Open wins are going to be close. 4 strokes is the smallest margin of victory. He twice won by 8 strokes, but his biggest accomplishment comes from his longevity and his consistency. He was in the top 10 for 17 consecutive years, from 1883 to 1909, and with the exception of a tie for 14th and a tie for 11th in 1910 and 1912, he finished in the top 10 20 times in the 22 years from 1883 to 1914. To go along with that longevity, he finished in a tie for 6. He finished in the top 10 in 1925 at the age of 54. To put that into perspective, that is 2 years older than Phil Mickelson's current age when he just took the money and ran or slinked away to the LIV tour because he's not putting it, sticking it up in the professional ranks anymore. His 1913 win at the British Open, his last, established a still standing record of 19 years between his first British Open win and his last British Open win. So just a remarkable span of consistent greatness to be in the top 10, many times in the top 5, that many times over that longest span.
That's dominance. Like, and I don't, you're not even done talking about him, but this is just one of them. Okay. This is just one of the 3. Okay. A 22-year-old winning the Open has to be one of the youngest. He's got to be up there with some of the youngest major winners ever. Because I mean that's not an easy feat. It's also really impressive that he's winning them in the fashion that he's winning them. there's lots and lots of evidence of major tournaments being decided on playoffs, whether they're 1 hole, 3 hole, or the ultimate best decider to figure out who won a major, an 18-hole playoff the next day. Some of these aren't even close. He's almost winning by double-digit strokes, which is absurd, especially at the age that he was doing it. That's Tiger-esque for us dumb Americans.
Yeah. Speaking of America, he did play in the U.S. Open 2 times, finishing second in 1900. I'm going to tell you about that one later. And 30th in 1913. So that would have been the year he just won his last British Open. He came to America a second time and finished 30th. Those are the only 2 times he played what we now consider major championship golf outside of the British Open. But he won the British Open a total of 5 times, and those 5 majors put him in a tie for 15th all time. After his playing career was up, he worked at many golf courses throughout England and also was the co-founder of the British PGA. He is in England widely credited with growing the idea of a golfing professional, which obviously professional golfer, you're going out and playing for money, but also that guy at your golf course or club who's there to give lessons and make sure the tee times run smoothly and that competitions happen and everything works the way it's supposed to. He widely makes this accepted. At the beginning of all 3 of these guys' career, being a professional golfer meant that you were actually banned from many clubs. Golf, a gentlemanly game for the affluent of the world. They didn't need to play for money, at least not prize money. They obviously, just like now, many people gamble while playing. They did that too, but they didn't play for prize money, and they looked down on people that did. And so he is the person that helped change that through his administrative work. He also won the Ryder Cup with England in 1933. If you've been paying attention the whole time, you may be scratching your head because that means he was in his 60s at that point. He was. He didn't play, though. He is, to this day, the only captain to not play in the Ryder Cup, and he captained England to a win in 1933. And like one of our other triumvirate members, he's going to go into golf course design at the end of his career, most notably designing Royal Birkdale, which has held the British Open 10 times, most recently in 2017. He is arguably going to be credited as the inventor of what we now know as the dog leg. That had existed before out of necessity and in a couple of courses in England, but he is going to popularize the design. And it's arguable because I'm going to tell you later that another member of the Triumvirate also invented the dog leg. So they even are competitive about golf course design, it would seem.
But you have to be, right? If you're at this high of a level of playing the game, why would that not translate to later in life with everything you do, right? They were probably competitive with everything. Just one note about that Ryder Cup win. Of course, yeah, he was old enough and probably experienced enough to just say, I'll be the captain, but I don't want to play. Someone can be in my spot. That 1933 Ryder Cup win by Great Britain was the last Ryder Cup win for Great Britain for 24 years. Great Britain did not win another Ryder Cup until 1957. And so I don't know if he was on any of those teams. He probably was not. He probably I assume he had captained in 33 and was like, drop the mic, I'm out. But if he was already that old, but yeah, maybe he should have captained a little while longer, because that was a long streak of defeat by Great Britain. And if I remember correctly, this is one of the reasons why they started expanding the Ryder Cup outside of Great Britain, because it's not quite competitive anymore. We should go find some help over here and help us be competitive again.
America got good, and they weren't expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our second member of the Great Triumvirate is perhaps the most famous, though nobody's going to be upset with you for not knowing this name right offhand, although we have mentioned him before here on the podcast because he has a trophy named for him. But the second member is Harry Vardon. He was born on May 9th, 1870, so a little bit older than Taylor. He was born in Jersey, which I learned. This is so hopefully everybody else gets a learning experience here. I knew New Jersey, right? So obviously in England has to be a place called Jersey. I just thought it was a city, and it's not. It is an island in the English Channel, which is actually a self-governing crown dependency of England. So they have like their own justice system and they can make some of their own laws, but they're still technically part of England. Never knew that.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah.
If only New Jersey would like break off and float off into the ocean and do their. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
World would be a little bit better.
Or am I?
No. He came from, everybody with me now, a poor family. And so golf was not readily accessible to him directly as a youth, but he did find himself working for an affluent family who did play golf. With them, he showed talent and a mind for the game as a caddy. And eventually, he was, as a caddy, he was shooting shots in a garden adjacent to the golf course when a member of the golf course there in Jersey saw him playing and used him to hustle some money from some of the club regulars. And they're like, what's this dude going to do? And then he took them
smokes them.
Yeah. And so, like we see a lot of times in, not a lot of times, but sometimes we see the family not necessarily be supportive of somebody's endeavor. And so the father in this situation was not at all happy with the fact that Harry was playing golf instead of just working, and obviously was not happy when his younger brother Tom did the same thing. And as we know, sometimes when a family or a parent doesn't want you to do something, you just go ahead and do it anyway. And that's what the brothers Vardon did, moving to England proper in 1890. Harry took jobs as a groundskeeper before becoming the club pro at Bury Golf Club and Ganton Golf Club by 1896. He is going to gain all of his skill to be a great professional golfer by practicing. I know that's a novel concept.
What?
But he practiced, and it would have been something interesting for the time period because most golfers just went out and played golf. And you would play 36 holes in a day. So why do I need to practice if I'm just going to play all day? That was the idea. I'll figure it out as I go. He had an ambitious and detailed practice program that led him to a couple of innovations. First, the way that you hold a golf club, if you're listening to this podcast and have played golf and been instructed at all, we all hold the golf club probably the same way, and it is with the Vardon grip. That's where you take the pinky finger of your bottom hand or the trailing hand and put it interlocked with the index finger of your top hand or leading hand so that both hands are connected. That's not his invention. It was invented by Johnny Laidley, but it is something that he popularized. He also came up with what at the time was a revolutionary approach to shot making. He preferred high shots that would go way up in the air that he could control where they landed, as opposed to the standard at the time, which was a low driven shot that would get a lot of distance on the roll, but you were left kind of guessing how it was going to end up, right? Am I going to hit a mound? Going to go right or left? Is it going to gain distance going downhill? Am I going to hit a hill going up? Is it wet? Right? He took some of that guesswork out of it by hitting a high shot. He won his first British Open by 1896 and then matched Taylor's back-to-back feat, winning in 1898 and 1899. And that is when his story starts to become very, very modern. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a second. That second British Open win in 1898 came when Willie Park Jr. missed a short putt on the 18th green that would have forced a playoff. I'm going to blow your mind here. Do you know how long the playoff would have been back then?
I would guess 18, but is it more than that?
36 holes.
Oh my God. So they'd play half the tournament again.
So, yeah, and it's even wilder because they would play, the way they did it is they would play 36 holes on Saturday and 36 holes on Sunday. They didn't take 4 days. They just doubled up. So then they were going to play another 36 for the playoff.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, that was the standard.
Gosh.
Park, who had done this kind of thing before, realized that he had made a mistake. He goofed up, right? He could have had a playoff. He didn't. And so he decided to offer Varden a $200 winner-take-all 72-hole match play kind of event. At first, Varden refused. The idea was they were going to play 36 holes at each player's home course. Varden did not like the idea of playing at Park's home course because it had a reputation for being a little rough and tumble and not accepting of people from outside the club. And so he initially refused, but when Park decided to play elsewhere, he accepted and dominated. So there was really no need to do that 36-hole playoff because in a 72-hole playoff or tournament, I guess, he ended up winning 11 and 10. So they only needed to play 62 of them for him to win. The first half of the match at North Brunswick, which is where Park decided to play, saw 10,000 fans. Now that's a lot of number for a lot of people for the time, but it's even more impressive when you consider the fact that the Prince of Wales was in neighboring Edinburgh, Scotland, for a visit. And in 10,000 people decided instead of going to go see the Prince of Wales, I'm going to go watch these two guys play golf. They built special train tracks and set up special ferries to transport fans to the area. And newspapers sold it by calling it the greatest golf competition of all time.
Wasn't the most competitive golf event of all time. I'm still mind blown that they played 2 days, 36 holes a day, and then would play 36 more holes on a third day.
Hold that thought, though, because I've got one that's crazier coming.
Oh, okay.
You gotta hold on to it because it is
shut.
We're gonna escalate here in a second. But this is real modern, though, right? Like two guys just deciding to go off the cuff and play that. Like this is the match, the Capital One,
the original match
before, right? Like nothing's new, right? These two guys did a thing. After his third British Open win, the back-to-back one in 1899, Varden is going to become a barnstormer of sorts, and he's going to tour the United States 3 separate times on these barnstorming tours. What he would do is he would just go around playing matches, sometimes head-to-head, like the one against Park. Sometimes he would play 3 guys at once, where they got to use their best ball each time, and he played by himself. And in 88 matches or so on these tours, he only lost 1 time in America. So he's out here making money and winning.
Making people look silly.
Yeah. And here's another modern idea. He was doing some of these in part to promote a new ball from Spalding called the Varden Flyer. So he had naming rights of this golf ball. He was doing a promotional tour for it. That's pretty modern, but he's doing it in 1900. He capped it off with U.S. Open appearances in all 3 of his trips to America. He won the whole thing in 1900. He lost the playoff in 1913. You can check that story out in the movie The Greatest Game Ever Played, which features Shia LaBeouf. And he lost a lead with a few holes to play in 1920. So he won once in his 3 trips to the U.S. Open. Unfortunately, at the twilight of his career, he had a bout with tuberculosis that took him away from golf. He was able to recover, kind of overcome the issue, but the tuberculosis did cause nerve damage in his right hand that slowed his abilities. There's plenty of questions from that time period, writers of the time period questioning how many tournaments he would have won, what his career would have looked like without the gap, and then the permanent damage from the tuberculosis. He, as kind of posthumous accomplishments, he has the Varden Trophy named for him in both America and in Europe. In America, it goes to the scoring average leader on the PGA Tour each year. In Europe, it goes to the European Tour's winner of the Race to Dubai, which is similar to the FedEx Cup playoff here in the PGA Tour of America. He finished his career with 49 wins. You will not see that on any official list because he didn't belong to any official tour. But he did win 7 majors, 6 British Opens, and a U.S. Open. That puts him tied for 7th all time. Remember, he only played 1 major in most years, and 2 he played 3 times. Right, so didn't have a lot of opportunities, still tied for 7th.
I was going to say that it's him and Taylor, and I'm going to guess Braid as well, not having 4 majors to play in every year. And of course, you could probably balance that out in a way because of the level of competition that you see today versus the likely relative level of competition of 1900. And so even if they had more majors, they would have probably won them, but they didn't have 4 majors to play at the time. Also, fun fact, while you were talking about Varden's brother Tom, he was also a fairly accomplished golfer. He competed in the Open 18 times and finished in the top 10, 9 of those. So not half bad himself. He never won. He did compete in the U.S. Open too, and didn't win that either. But he was not a terrible golfer himself. But you will never hear of him because of who his brother is. Which is sort of unfortunate. But Harry was obviously the better of the two.
Hey, we're talking about him solely because of who his brother was. So a blessing and a curse, I guess.
Yeah, we wouldn't know who he was otherwise, I guess so.
That's true. All right, it is everybody's favorite time. It is time for trivia.
Trivia!
You're going to nail it this time. It's great. Mm-hmm. All right. Very simple question. Not really very simple question, but you're going to get it. You're going to get it. All right. There are 4 major championships in professional golf.
Yep.
Okay. Some of these are ties, so you don't have to give me everybody that's tied. You just got to tell me one name for each. Give me the person who has won the most at each major. So somebody with the most Masters, most U.S. Open, most PGA, most British Opens.
Oh, man. Okay. So we have PGA, Masters, US, and British. I don't know how to start. Should I just start by naming golfers who have won the most majors and see if that counts for any of the answers?
That may not be your worst strategy. If you went that way.
So we said that I've already forgotten which one. So we've said that one of these 3 has 6 British Open championships. And which one was it? I think it's Varden.
It is Varden, and he does have 6, and that is the most British Open championships. That is the most?
Okay.
Yep.
Yahoo! 1 down. All right. Let's think about these. Trying to think of which one to do first. Masters comes to mind first, but for some reason, so if I said Tiger has to have, one. He has to have the most majors of one of these, and I don't know which one it would be.
I will tell you, I will give you a hint before you do the Masters. It is the only one that does not have, other than the British Open, that does not have a tie. There is a person at the top of the leaderboard
Oh,
of the Masters.
okay. So Tiger has 5, I believe.
He does have 5.
Tiger
This
has
is a true statement.
5. Is that the most Masters wins?
No.
Huh. Okay. So then would the most Masters wins be Nicholas?
Jack Nicklaus has 6 Masters wins, which is the most all time.
That's the
So
most?
Wood's 5, Palmer's 4, and then a group of players at 3.
Huh. Okay. So it was Varden, Nicholas. So that was 5 of Tiger's total. So then would he have the most of any other ones? Huh. I don't know. All right. So the other two were stumping me off the top of my head. What nationality? This might be good. What nationality is or are the leaders for the PGA? Let's start there.
So for the PGA, there are 2 men tied for the most with 5 each. One is from America. One is from America. I don't know why I said it that way.
That doesn't help at all.
They're both from the United States.
That doesn't help. Are either of them the same person as the person who has the most Masters tournaments?
Well, yes. One of them is the same person as the person with the most Masters tournaments.
So then Nicholas has 5 PGAs.
That is correct. He has 5 PGAs. He is tied for the most.
Who would the other would be? Palmer?
No.
Woods? I don't know.
He was you may not remember, he was the answer to our trivia question on our last golf event.
Sam Snead?
Oh, nope, you're right. That was who it was. It is not him. Walter Hagen in this case.
Hagen.
Walter Hagen, yeah.
Oh,
is
okay.
the other PGA. All right, so now you're just missing the U.S. Open. And I will tell you have 4 choices.
Ooh, let's go. 4 choices. So, what nationalities are they?
3 of them are from America. 1 is from Scotland.
All right, I'm going to throw something out, and this might sound crazy, but I'm going to also say, just based on sheer numbers, that Jack Nicklaus is probably one of these leaders as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I think you'll be able to name at least, if not both, of the other 2 Americans though.
Okay. When did they play?
So one was from 1923 to 1930, or that's when he won, from between 1923 and 1930. Okay. One won his majors from 1946 to 1953. Both would be considered the or one of the best players of those eras. Okay. And all time.
I said Sam Snead earlier. I think he was also in that 20s to 30s era, wasn't he? Is he that old?
He
I don't know how. I don't remember.
Sam Snead won majors from the 40s to the 50s, so he's not the 20s era. He's the
but he's not one of these 50s. 2.
No, he's not one of the people.
Okay, so that's
a contemporary of one of them, but
contemporary of them. So let's think. Old, like one of the first prominent American golfers I can think of is, he was an amateur though, wasn't he? Bobby Jones? Was he an amateur for a while? And he's one of these?
He is one of these. He won 4 U.S. Opens And I know the first two of which he was an amateur. I'm not sure when he turned pro, but yeah, he won 4 U.S. Opens total.
Oh, dang.
In
Okay.
addition to a group of U.S. amateur wins. He is one of the two that you're looking for.
I can't think of the other guy. I know that there's a great golfer in that time period, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I don't think I can come up with it.
This one, okay. His last name he shares with the most popular professional wrestler of the 1980s and probably all time.
Ben Hogan.
Ben Hogan.
Yeah.
Ben Hogan is
that was a multi-step thing in my head. It took a few seconds.
Yeah, you had to be like this. Okay. Yeah. Ben Hogan. So Nicholas, Hogan, Jones all have 4 U.S. Open wins. The other 4-time winner is Willie Anderson, who is from Scotland. And we were talking off air about the weakness of early U.S. Open fields. And he was the winner of a lot of those early ones. He won 4 times in 5 years from 1901 to 1905. Those were all the only majors he played in. Were a couple of U.S. Opens in a row. Never played in the British, even though he's from Scotland. And he's credited with 4 major wins.
Well, that's interesting.
Which is incredible.
Go for it.
Yeah. Hey, so I told you it was going to be easy because it was Nicholas and Varden, and then you were done. So,
just by sheer numbers, Nicholas had to be at the top of at least one of them. Turns out
he has the most, and he spread them out fairly evenly. So
good for him.
Yep. All right, back to our story. Our next member of the Triumvirate is James Braid. He was born February 6, 1870 in Scotland. And unlike the other two, he was born to an affluent family. And so he started playing golf at a very early age. He turned his interest into golf into a carpentry business where he focused on making clubs. Remember that for most of golf's early time, woods were made of wood. Go figure. And so there was a lot of wood working involved in golf as well. He made golf clubs before finally becoming a professional golfer in 1896. Varden and Taylor both turned pro in 1890. Braid was the last one to do so and was the oldest one to do so, turning pro at the age of 26. So relatively late in life, even then, definitely late in life now to be turning pro. He has a streak, much like the other two, where he finished not in the top 10, but he finished in the top 5, 14 consecutive years from 1899 to 1912, and 16 of 17 years from 1896 to 1912. He finished in the top 10 17 straight times. So incredible streak, much like Taylor, of consistency. His first British Open win broke a streak of 6 out of 7 that were won by Taylor or Varden in 1901. So they had a little run that they went on where they won 6 of 7. Then Braid finally broke through and made the first decade of the 20th century his decade. He won 5 of the 10 British Opens contested in the 1900s, 1900s, the 00s.
I like that.
Yeah. So Varden and Taylor get there first, have kind of a stranglehold on the event. Then Braid comes in and really makes it his own. He was the first person to win 5 Opens. Eventually, he would be tied by Taylor, passed by Varden, and he's equaled by 2 other people that we're going to get to in a little bit. He's also the last person to defend the British Open Championship. He won back-to-back in 05 and 06. It was the last time it would happen for 102 years until Patrick Harrington won in 2008. He, unlike the other two, only ever played the British Open in major golf. He was very afraid of travel and very rarely left the British Isles to go anywhere, not even anywhere else in Europe, much less all the way to America. His 5 British Open wins, again, tie him for 15th all time with his rival Taylor. As a course designer later in life, just like Taylor, he is going to remodel Carnoustie, which has held the British Open 8 times, last in 2018. And he designed Glen Eagles, where the 2014 Ryder Cup was held. And even though he didn't travel, he did design 2 courses, or wrote the designs for 2 courses in Singapore, based solely off relief maps that he had. So he knew the terrain, drew it out on the relief maps, and sent it into Singapore for him to
go
design.
do this.
Yeah.
He never stepped foot at it. That's crazy.
Never saw a picture of the place, but just designed it nonetheless. Jeez. He is credited along with Taylor for popularizing the use of dogleg in course design, but he also has 2 ideas that were revolutionary at the time, but very common now. The first is that the shorter the hole, or at least the shorter the approach shot, the smaller the green should be, and the more punishing the guards around it should be. So if you've got a short shot, it should be a difficult shot. If you got a long shot, you should have a bigger green, kind of an easier go at it, because the difficulty is in the distance, not in the location. He also designed with the philosophy that there should always be 2 ways to approach each hole, an easy way and a difficult way, with the ability to gain a stroke by succeeding at the difficult way. I tend to agree with this idea for design. It shouldn't be wide open. There should be some thought in how you approach. If you're above the skill level that I am anyway, there should be some thought into how you approach the hole. And if you want to take the risky play, you can gain an advantage or you can get hurt. And if you want to take the easy play, then you're not going to get that advantage unless the other person screws up, but you'll be more consistent. And so that was revolutionary. A lot of links courses at that point in golf's history, which were just kind of flat and straight, and you hit the ball and chase it. And the difficulty was in bunkers everywhere and bushes in the middle of the fairway and things like that would have made things difficult. All right, so those are the 3 profiles. Here are a couple of cool events that the 3 were in. In 1896, we had the first time that 2 of these people squared off against each other. Taylor and Varden were tied after 72 holes. So this is the one that's going to blow your mind, right? So they played 36 holes one day, played 36 holes the next day. They're tied, but they could not play the 36-hole playoff on Monday because both men were already scheduled to play a 36-hole tournament that day in a different part of England. So they played 72 holes of British Open Championship golf, played this other tournament on Monday. Then on Tuesday, they came back to the British Open and played a 36-hole playoff. Except in that in-between tournament, Taylor ended up tying for the lead in that one and had to play a 9-hole playoff there. So my man played something, let's see, 72, 36 more is what? 108.
108.
Then 9 more is
117.
And then he played another 36 holes.
Ew.
153. 153
in 5
holes.
days or 4 days? 5 days.
5 days. No, 4 days. 150. Yeah, 153 in 4 days.
So there was one day he played 45 holes because he had to play 36 and then a 9 after that in one day, and then went and played the 2-round playoff of the Open that they're supposed to finish 2 days before.
Yeah. And the 9 holes may have cost him because Varden ended up winning the playoff at the Open Championship, which would have been his first Open Championship win, and dethroned the back-to-back champion in Taylor.
Imagine he won 3 straight. Like if he had done 3 in a row, if he had not done that 9-hole playoff.
Like from a competitive standpoint, obviously he wants to play the 9-hole playoff, but you got to wonder if part of him was saying, you know what, I can see.
I'm gonna miss this putt and be like, let me go back and play the Open. You take this one. I'm gonna go back this way.
The second interesting tournament between the Triumvirate also involved Taylor and Varden. In 1900, the British Open was played over 2 days at the old course at St. Andrews. And I actually misspoke here. This is going to be all three of them. There were terrible conditions this year. The wind was bad. The rain was bad. The winning score was plus 21 that year. So, not a lot of great golf being played, but it was the first time that the Great Triumvirate placed 1 through 3 in a tournament. So they not only just always finished first or second. In 1900, they were first, second, and third. Taylor, for his work, got 50 pounds for his trouble. That is the equivalent. Purses have gone up a lot. That was the equivalent of $5,236.64 in today's money for winning the tournament, which is, a good sum of money, but definitely short of the millions we see today for winning one of these things.
Yeah, and imagine like what Live Golf is doing and how much money those guys are making. Like that, well, that's blowing PGA money out of the water. So,
well, that's blood money, so that doesn't count.
It's fine.
So, a newspaper in Scotland, appropriately named The Scotsman, wondered if golf was losing its glorious uncertainty, which many regard as its peculiar attraction after that event, because these three had started to become so dominant and make a name for themselves. In 1901, at the British Open in Muirfield, they finished 1, 2, 3 for the second straight year. This was the tournament that Braid ended up winning to break the hold of Varden and Taylor they had on the tournament. Varden finished 3 shots behind Braid. Taylor finished 4 shots behind Braid. And then fourth place finished 7 more shots behind. The three of them were within 4 shots. Yeah. 3 of them were within 4 shots of each other. And then you had to go 7 back to fourth and another 5 shots back to fifth. Like, that's how far ahead of the field these three were. Braid, it was close between him and Taylor. He actually broke a club on his final approach shot. So little control over where the ball was going, but it safely landed on the green, preventing a disaster that would have been not being able to finish with the club you intended. They finished 1 through 3 for the final time in the 1906 British Open, again at Muirfield. In that tournament, all three had a slow start. A group of amateurs actually led. In this case, they played the tournament over 3 days instead of 2. So they did have the good sense to make one of the days an 18
what a concept.
Hole outing. But eventually, Braid would win that one as well. The tournament I told you I was going to tell you a little bit more about when we were doing the profiles is the 1900 U.S. Open. The 1900 British Open is the one that had terrible conditions, and Taylor had won. He actually won and broke Varden's streak of back-to-back wins, just like Varden had beat his streak of back-to-back wins. Shortly after he did that, both men found themselves at the U.S. Open in Chicago. Varden was there to promote his new ball. Taylor decided he would join him at the last minute, something that did not make Varden very happy. Have to play him a second time after he had just lost to him. But it did create a lot of buzz here in America and in Chicago. But it didn't go well for Varden. Taylor and Varden, it didn't go well for Taylor. Both of them dominated the tournament, though. Like, the field was garbage other than these two. And Varden beat Taylor by 2 shots. And then, just like in one of the British Opens, it was another 7 shots back to third place. Again, a lot of British influence in the U.S. Opens early, but it wasn't necessarily the best British players playing. They were just all better than the best Americans at the time. So we get 2 really great Brits, and they dominated the tournament. Here is some final stuff about this triumvirate. And I want you to just try and put some of this stuff into perspective. They won 6 British Opens for Varden, Braden Taylor with 5. Those are first and second all time to this day in British Open victories. Braid's 16 top fives are tied with Jack Nicklaus for most all time at the British Open. And then in third, right below them, is a tie between Varden and Taylor with 15. These 3 guys finished 16 and 15 times in the top 5. And in the 120 years since then, right, only one person has done that since. And it's Jack Nicklaus.
And it's Jack Nicklaus, yeah.
Now, put that in a little bit of perspective. Sometimes Americans didn't go to the British Open because it wasn't always looked at as the big event. That's kind of a more modern thing. There was a time where it lost some of its luster, but Jack Nicklaus is the only one to do it. Here's the other wild thing. In the history of major championship golf, there are only 7 players with 5 wins at the same event. Nicklaus and Varden are the only 2 players to have 6 wins at one event. Jack's got 6 wins at the Masters. Varden's got 6 at the British. That's the list. Of the rest of them, Nicklaus has a second 5-time champ or 5-time, 5 victories, whatever we want to call it, at the PGA Championship along with Walter Hagen. Tiger has 5 Masters, like we said earlier. And then at the British Open, it's Braid Taylor, Tom Watson, and Peter Thompson. They have 5 British Open wins. The thing I want to put in perspective, Tom Watson, Peter Thompson, Tiger Woods, Walter Hagen, Jack Nicklaus all belong to 5 different eras of golf. That's why they're able to have 5 wins at a major. Braid Taylor and Varden played against each other almost every single year of their career at the one major that they mostly played. And they are on this list with that accomplishment. That is the part that blows my mind. To me, that's bigger than the Nicklaus Palmer player group, the Hogans and the Bobby Joneses and their contemporaries. Like, that's some kind of next level incredible that they put up these numbers at the same time.
It really is. And when we came up with this idea okay, so before that, the fact that majors were not, like, 4 majors were not a thing until very recent in history. Mm-hmm. And so of course the British Open being the most prestigious, if you ask most golf people, like, that's the only one they played at. Imagine what they would have done if they had 4 majors to go play at, and if one of them wasn't afraid to leave the island. Like, one of them never played the U.S. Open. Imagine if they had easy access to all 4, and if all 4 existed. But when we were coming up with this idea, and I was thinking about it later to do this episode about these 3 guys, the one thing that it kept sticking out in my mind, like 3 great individual athletes in an individual sport, was tennis. And the greatness that we are witnessing toward the hind end, by the way, of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic in men's tennis. And I looked some of this stuff up just to give you some perspective on how great they were. This could be an episode all on its own in a few years when they're all done and retired and stuff. From Federer's major win in 2003 at Wimbledon to now, it's exactly 19 years, because Wimbledon is starting relative to when we're recording this. So 19 full years of majors, okay? That's 75 because one got canceled. The 2020 Wimbledon got canceled for COVID. 62 of the 75 majors in the last 19 years were won by these 3 men. 62 of 75. And in 8 of the 19 years, these 3 swept the Grand Slams. No one else in 8 of the 19 years, no one else even won a tennis major. Okay, that's the type of greatness that these guys did 130 years ago. Like, just absolutely dominant at their sport, and we have the benefit of specialization and training and technology and the sport being worldwide and more available to more people. Two of these guys were born from nothing, and I wondered, while you were talking about Braid being from an affluent family, I wonder how he looked at Varden and Taylor, because there was a bigger divide in like who was able to play golf at the time versus who wasn't worthy because they weren't affluent or whatever. And like they started as caddies and they became really, 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 really good. I wonder how Braid looked at the other two because of their upbringing and like their background and where they came from.
Certainly would be something worth exploring because of that. I tend to think putting that in perspective though is great, because these three with multiple majors that we would recognize probably put up the same kind of numbers, because they clearly they're winning the the event that is the biggest one in the world when they were playing it. Right. So you stretch that over 4, I think they put up those kind of numbers. The most interesting thing to me is like the juxtaposition, the oppositeness of Taylor being good like all the time and having 19 years in between wins, and like Braid just showing up in his 30s, winning 5 times, and then he's outie. Yeah. Like he had a stretch of top 5s that was impressive, but his wins all happened in 10 years. He won half
later,
of the British Opens in one decade, and that was it. But in that decade, if he comes to America, I think he wins whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Like even if he's there with the other two, I think he could notch some. And so, yeah.
It's like playing Nadal at Roland Garros. Like you go there just assuming that you're going to meet him, and whoever's lucky enough to get to the final, that you're going to play him. Like he's just going to be there all the time. I can't imagine being the 4th best British golfer in 1900. Like imagine how miserable that. Like we've talked about some other players who like would have been great if they weren't playing against XYZ of their time, you know, because like they were great in their own right. And the only reason we don't know about them, like Billy Casper, for example, in golf, is the fact that they played against the 3 best players of their era and 3 of the greatest players of all time. Imagine being the 4th guy on this list.
Yeah.
So sad.
Incredible.
It really is incredible.
All right. Well, that's our story. And if you've got an idea or a thought or something you want us to cover, be sure to let us know so that we can do that for you. But until next time, that's what you don't know about the Great Triumvirate of Golf. See you later.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only please, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.